So welcome back to part 2 of McLuhan's 3 Laws. This is a short series of my interpretation of Marshall McLuhan's thinking and how it applies to the AI madness that we're all going through. This is a 3-part series because there are 3 laws as far as I conceptualize them. If you haven't watched the explanation of the first law, that every augmentation is also an amputation, I suggest you start there. But for now, let's dive in to the second law. McLuhan's second law is that every new technology resurrects an old ghost. What does he mean? Well, let us use his favorite example of radio. If you think about the world before radio came along and became big, it was very much a print-influenced world, right? So you had newspapers, and you had books, and you had people writing letters to each other. It's very much a world in which the way the sequential thinking of the printed word, the organization of the thinking, influenced the way people thought and conducted business, all of that stuff. But then radio came along and became big in 1920s, let's say. And Marshall McLuhan's point is that somehow it resurrected the old tribal oral world. It sort of got back to the ghost of the shaman who was, chanting to you these strange things that you didn't quite understand, but you wanted to believe. It resurrected the bard, like Homer, who would orally transmit to you the tradition, and therefore it will go straight to the heart because of the emotion in his voice, not just because of the logic of his words. And the basic effect of that is that all of a sudden mass communication becomes so much more persuasive and can actually bypass the guardrails of the logical, sequential, proper kind of system 2 thinking that were created by the print. And then obviously, and this is the story that McLuhan tells and Huxley tells as well, obviously that resulted in populists at the time, and Hitler most famously, using that new medium to really bypass a lot of the logical thinking and the guardrails that would stop people like him from rising to power, because he could just sort of channel this oral, shamanic kind of ghost right into people's hearts and their minds. That's an example of how a new technology at the time, radio, resurrected an old ghost of the tribal oral communication and shaman. Now, how does that apply to AI? I think AI will actually resurrect a whole bunch of ghosts that we still have hiding in our culture. Well, I should say actually in our cultures, so we can look at that from multiple perspectives. And that's really the question that I think it would be very, very wise for all the AI builders and integrators to ask themselves: what are the ghosts that we're actually resurrecting? Because that informs where the technology will go. So what are the ghosts that we are resurrecting with AI? A few readily come to mind. First of all, it's the ghost of the confession booth, right? I think we've all seen how a lot of people use AI to really just sort of talk to somebody who is not going to judge, or if they're going to judge, then they're going to most likely tell them that it's okay and they're right. And that's the same psychological need that was fulfilled by the confession booth, right? Because you go there is a condition of anonymity, there is the priest, and there is God, and really that's it. And you can take things off your chest, and come out sort of with some of your thoughts cleared, but also your conscious being much clearer. So that's one clearly being sort of resurrected. Another one is sort of this need for a godlike decision-making entity that is all-seeing and can make the right decisions for me, and I can delegate the decision-making, right? It's the old ghost of the prophet or of the oracle. So if you think back to, again, ancient Greece times, you were, let's say, a king or an important individual of some sort. You have a big decision to make. You're not sure. What do? Well, you go to Delphi and you ask the oracle, and they give you the solution, but it's a black box solution. You don't know exactly how the reasoning, if there was any reasoning, but you have your solution. It's also sometimes tricky to interpret that solution about what you should do. But the black box nature of the advice given to you is in this case a feature, not a bug, because it creates this asymmetric relationship. It's like the reasoning of this thing, God, or in this case AI, is so much beyond my capacity that I can just take what it tells me and implement it. It's so much bigger than I am and smarter and all sorts of things. Therefore, it's good advice, right? And so this is a very different dynamic from when you normally seek advice from a friend, because you want the advice because it's going to be understandable to you why this is the right course of action. But with Oracle, it's a different relationship. You have, or with God or with AI, it's a different asymmetric relationship. So black box nature of that advice is a feature, not a bug. And I think that's, again, what we're seeing a lot in how people actually use AI. They delegate the difficult decisions. Some people, like to talk it through, like with a therapist, but some people sort of go all the way and say, you solve it for me and just tell me how I should behave in this situation. And then, there is sort of an idea of them becoming little prophets. I have this essay from a couple of years back called Personal Prophets, basically arguing that we're all going to be walking around very soon, and I think we will, with little personal prophets sitting in our ears, telling us as the angels and the demons what we should and shouldn't do. And then the question comes, well, whose thoughts am I thinking now? Is it my thoughts or somebody else's? But that's beside the point of what we're discussing now. Basically, there are lots of ghosts, culturally embedded sort of modes of thinking that are suppressed now, but they're very much there. And it's obviously not just the big things like the prophets. It's also the small things. I think as AI sort of starts its diffusion into the physical world with little robots and just things starting to be smart, we'll see a massive, massive comeback of things like nieces, right? Which is a Scandinavian idea of a little household sort of spirit or a little creature that lives in your household and protects it. In the ancient Greece, that they had this legend of the Talos, right, the massive bronze-made automaton that was protecting the island. But also, in all sorts of cultures, massive, massive connotations. For example, in Japanese culture. Taking that detour for a second, if things like Tamagotchis, came from the Japanese culture because they have a long tradition of these little creatures that are supposed to be your personal, spirits, and essentially you have this strange relationship with them where they're needy and you need to sort of support them, but they can also help you. And so, and then obviously Pokemon's, Totoro, like all of that stuff, it's very much there latent in culture. And that's exactly the modes that AI is going to resurrect. My bet is that very, very soon something will emerge from, most likely from Japan, but maybe from somewhere else, which is like Tamagotchi meets SimCity meets AI agent, autonomous world type of thing. And it will probably work very much like some of the things that can be described in the context of the Japanese culture, and then you go to the Middle East and you go, yeah, obviously we have the jinns, right, the ones that you give 3 wishes to, but they're bound to the lamp, and they're omnipotent, but they're still bound to the lamp and to the owner. And we start looking at all those things like the Aladdin and Jafar, and what happens when you have tremendous power in the wrong hands, your 3 wishes type thing. All of that comes back, and you start seeing that, yeah, maybe it is not, Jarvis. Maybe it is actually a jinn that we're putting together. And it's quite interesting to think about how all the folk stuff can be interpreted as very much a warning against what happens when you have a jinn. But that's beside the point, I think. Basically, the idea is in all our cultures, there's a whole bunch of ghosts waiting around to be resurrected. And AI is such a powerful set of technologies that a lot of them are going to come alive. And if you're building something in AI, if you're trying to imagine how AI fits into your world, if you are thinking about where these products actually go, it's very, very helpful to think about the cultural ghosts that are still there in your culture and that are going to be resurrected, because that gives you really the direction of where this thing is headed. And then if you move a little bit ahead of that direction, then you know exactly what it is that you're trying to build, and it will fit right into people's lives, right? So it will be a familiar thing rather than an unfamiliar thing. It could be still scary, but at least you have the idea about it in your culture. So that's McLuhan's second law, which I think is super practically relevant for anybody who is trying to build or implement AI. And it is that every new technology resurrects an old ghost. So there are a whole bunch of ghosts that are being resurrected right now. And thinking about these ghosts really help you see where the technology is going, or maybe where it could go. And McLuhan is saying it will definitely go that way. So that's a bit of foresight for you. That's it for part 2 of our McLuhan's 3 laws. So the first one was every augmentation is also an amputation. The second one is that every new technology resurrects an old ghost. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so that you get notified when McLuhan's third law and the final mini lecture in the series comes out. Have fun.